as the storm was absolutely pounding down with snow and hail at that point. There's always shelter around. Abandoned buildings have been our best friend this year, and we saw what looked like a little shack.
Once we got inside this shack, the water was still coming in a bit. We're like, look, we're at least out of the wind. Sometime during the middle of the night there, it had gone quiet, and within 30 seconds, it went from dead still and quiet to like the most intense wind we've like probably ever experienced in our lives. And it sounded like a jet or something was taking off above us. And Luke and I were both screaming at one another. I was frantically trying to get out of my tent to see what was going on. And then halfway through, the sound got like so alarming and intense that I just curled up in a ball and put my hands over my head because I was like, the roof's coming down. And sure enough, it sort of calmed down again after a few minutes. And I went outside and the snow was coming down sideways. And the roof of this little shack, which must have been there for 40 years, had been peeled off like a sardine can.
Welcome to Seek Travel Ride, where we share the stories and experiences of people taking amazing adventures by bike. Whether it's crossing state borders, mountain ranges, countries or continents, we want to share that spirit of adventuring on two wheels with our listeners. Hello listeners! Bella Malloy here, host of Seek Travel Ride, and today I'm pretty excited to be joined by two fellow Australians. They are Sam Edder and Luke Fowler, two mates who collectively go by the nickname of the Garbage Bag Boys. Today I'm speaking to them while they are in Greece in the midst of their adventure, having left northern Vietnam many months ago to head west for their ultimate end destination of Spain. Luke and Sam are certainly no strangers to unconventional forms of travel. Their previous big journey together saw them spend a few wild months hitchhiking their way across India. Travelling like that no doubt served as a great apprenticeship for what was to come on this bike adventure, as the trip so far has seen them link up some of the most challenging off-road routes you could find on places like bikepacking.com. But their ethos of keeping things simple and saying yes to uncertainty has equally seen them making their way across some pretty wild and scenic places. This particular adventure saw them start with the punchy Ha Giang Loop in northern Vietnam. They then crossed the border, cycled into China before tackling the remote wilds of the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. From there, they've made their way along the challenging tracks of Central Asia, somewhat spurred on, as well as perhaps a little bit tortured by the incredible high mountain landscapes of Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. They then swapped one mountain range for another, leaving the Pamirs behind them, taking a flight from Dushanbe to Tbilisi, and of course then started set out on their next challenging route, the Caucasus Crossing. You guessed it, more challenges through Georgia and Armenia. There is a theme I'm picking up to their style of travel: remote, wild, beautiful and intense. That's just the terrain. Throw in Mother Nature's propensity for gifting us with the most extreme weather in these landscapes. And listeners, I'm sure we're going to be set for some pretty crazy stories to come. Sam, Edder and Luke Fowler, I'm pretty stoked for this session, so a big warm welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Bella.
Bella.
From hearing that descriptive recap, I'm starting to think, why on earth would anyone want to do this, what we've done?
Hopefully, maybe during the running of this session, guys, you might find the answer to your own question.
I don't know. Yeah, I hope so, because I don't know how I could justify what we've just said. But yeah, here we are.
Hopefully, I have spoken the truth. This is just like your adventure CV read back out to you, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, but just when you, I guess, condense it, to a few sentences, it does sound a little bit loony. But yeah.
It also feels like such a big injustice when I read out something like that in a few sentences, because I'm like, I've just read out a few sentences of what felt like a very, very significant part of your life, especially through some very torturous and challenging moments, no doubt. Lads, I have a long list of questions for you. I'm sure we're going to have a big ball of fun, but the question I start my show with, and I ask it of all my guests, is, do you remember the very first bike you ever rode? So, Luke, I'm going to go to you first. Tell me all about your first bike.
Yeah, I was never quite big into cycling, mountain biking or riding bikes specifically as a sport. I guess my first memory, what comes to mind, is probably when I was 10 years old and I grew up surfing a lot on the west coast of Australia. the bike always gives a lot of people independence when they're young, when they're yet to have their license or drive any car or motor vehicle. And I had an old bike in the garage and put a surfboard rack on it. And that was my way to get to the beach, which was only a few kilometres down the road, but it was a lot better than walking down or waiting on mum and dad to drive me down to the beach, as I had done for so many years. So, yeah, I guess putting the rack on the bike and riding down was my first memory of a great time.
I lived on the other side of Australia, on the east coast, and for a period of my time, Luke, I lived in Bondi, and I used to wake up at 5 to go. I wasn't a surfer, I was a bodyboarder. I remember I'd wake up at 5 and me and my husband, we'd walk the 300 or 400 metres down to the beach to catch some waves. And I always remember seeing guys or girls on the bikes with the surfboard stands. And I've always thought, how cool is that? Like, they're riding a bike and then they're surfing waves and then they're riding home. That's cool. I love it. What about you, Sam? Tell me about your first bike.
Yeah, a bike was a pretty important part of my, early teenage years growing up. I sort of grew up in Leipzig in Germany, which is a city near Berlin. And during my time there, my parents were very busy with work, new expats in the city, sort of trying to build a life for themselves. And Leipzig is a city that is very bike friendly. It's relatively safe and it is completely flat. And as a 10 or 11-year-old, given this crazy amount of freedom now that my parents were very preoccupied, I just spent, every weekend and most afternoons just skirting around the city with mates. And the bike became like this ticket to freedom. You could just set off on a Saturday morning with your flip phone and just ride all day. Leipzig went through a lot of economic struggles after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And so the whole city is scattered with huge abandoned buildings and old catacombs and just empty factories and stuff, like a child's playground. It's pretty perfect. And so we would just spend all day from sunrise to sunset riding from one spot to another. And, we built bike trailers and built our own bike racks and things like that to haul around snacks and wood for fires. And it was very, it was very fun. And so I've always had a really fond view of bikes as this way of just being totally free.
Yeah, and it's funny because both of you in a very, very different way distinctly sort of mention that idea of, freedom. Luke, you were saying, it is the way that you got to get around before you could find any other way to get around. And the same thing there with you, Sam. It's funny, I was chatting to people on the weekend just saying, I think we grew up in some of the best times where you still did get around like that. Before this big bike travel, you guys have done some pretty epic different style of adventures of your own. Luke, I think I saw you've travelled around Australia, not on your bike. I don't know whether after this trip, whether that's something you want to do. Your trip around Australia was in a motor vehicle, but did you do the full lap? That was with your mates, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was with my good mate at the time from home. I think as soon as we got our licenses, unfortunately or fortunately, the bike was put back in the garage, and it's just the way it was, and you could explore more on the coast. At the end of 2021, in the midst of COVID, we planned to do overseas travel. Couldn't do that, so we thought, let's not let that stop us. And we're both avid surfers, spend all our time at the beach doing kite surfing, surfing, wakeboarding, all water sports. And we thought, yeah, why not explore our own backyard, our own country? Up until that point, I'd hardly really seen much of Australia. So we, set off from Perth and essentially travelled right across the Nullarbor through South Australia and into the desert, the middle of South Australia, because we couldn't get into New South Wales or Victoria at that time, and right up the coast to Port Douglas of Queensland. So not a full lap, but we tried to dedicate as much time as possible to being on the coast and surfing good waves. And yeah.
I've got to ask a surfer this question because Australia's got some epic beaches and some epic surf. Where's your favourite surf beach?
Oh, God. I think in terms of quality of the waves and seclusion and isolation, I think in South Australia, Cactus Beach is pretty much the best you'll get. Very sharky out that way. That's kind of the catch you get. You can't have it all. You're kind of out there by yourself at times, but it's, I guess if you want to call it a risk you're willing to take.
Is it ever in your head? I often get asked that. Obviously, when I'm in France, I get asked that heaps by people. Oh, the animals in Australia are really dangerous. Aren't you worried about snakes, spiders and sharks and stuff? And I think, at the beach, I used to go all the time. I guess every now and then it might be a little bit in your head, but what about as a surfer? Like, is that in your head?
I think it never really was up until that trip and travelling through South Australia, because we rolled into one of the first towns in a remote part of the state, Streaky Bay, and it was advertised as like one of the best surf spots in Australia. And then I think right next to that was the world record for the biggest, great white shark caught off.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, great.
Like, all right, so this is what we're dealing with. The best waves in the world, but the biggest sharks as well. So,
oh,
and as I get older, still very young, every time I go out now, I don't know why, I do think of them more and more, and having people that I know that have been caught up in, shark attacks. Yeah, it is definitely the forefront of your mind sometimes. The more isolated you get, the colder the water, you tend to think of it a lot more.
yeah, I distinctly remember a time spent, again, I was on a bodyboard down at Tarthra Beach on the New South Wales south coast, and we were there with a few mates just, having fun on the waves in the late afternoon, and there was another surfer on his own, and then all 5 of us went in, and then he came in as well, and he said, I just saw that the percentages went up a little bit there, so I decided to get myself out. I thought, yeah, I guess it can play on your mind.
Yeah.
Sam, you've had a really different entrance. Oh, gosh, how do I even describe it? I guess a different occupation in a way. War photojournalist. That's not something that you see on someone's CV quite often, but it has meant that you have had experiences of a different type of travel and observations in different countries as well. How did you get into that?
That's it's quite a long story. There's going to be a few things I say which probably open more doors and more questions, but I don't think I explain it without. But I went to high school, boarding school in India for the last 2 years of my education, and at that school, ideas like action, community service, these like ideas of how to be an ethical person in the world were really at the forefront of what it meant to be in the school. And a lot of the people who leave the school go on to, work with humanitarian programs or go into politics and policy making. And I wasn't exactly about all that at the time. And so after I graduated, I moved to Vienna, where I worked for a year as a writer, and I was just at a company there. On paper, it was the perfect workplace and one of the best cities in the world, but I found myself like really dissatisfied. I felt like I wasn't living a life of the version of meaning that I had sort of grown up around. And so when I turned 19, I sort of took a step back and looked at my life and realized I wasn't ticking these boxes. And I sort of looked around the world, around my environment, and saw what is a cause out there that I could use my writing and my photography skills to just put my energy into, something that's a little bit bigger than me, with a human background, rather than just working at a company. And I did some research, and I found that there was an ongoing war in Ukraine at the time. So this was in early 2019. And using my credentials as a writer from the company, I managed to get press passes. From there, I managed to get military accreditation. And I arranged a 3-week trip with another alumni from my school who was from Ukraine to go to the Ukraine conflict zone and work on a photo portrait series. And I'd been a photographer throughout most of my life. And for me, photography had always been a way to understand new places and connect with them. And I'd moved quite a lot, so it sort of got strengthened throughout the years. And I decided that now was the time to test myself as a human, see if I could achieve what the greats or my personal inspirations in photography had done by telling these like really human stories rather than just making nice marketing material. And so I flew to Kiev, got my military accreditation, and then went east to the front lines there. And on my first trip to Ukraine, we ended up staying about 2.5 months. And yeah, it sort of just took off. Like I didn't really have any expectations. Mum and Dad were always very supportive and understanding because of their sort of unique upbringing I'd had. But their friends and extended family were sort of shaking their head like, what the hell is your son doing running around a war zone at the age of 19? And fair enough. But after a few months on the ground, I started getting my first articles out. I had some pretty good luck in terms of the stories I ran across, and being a younger person from a country so far away as Australia, it definitely opened a lot of doors for me because I think people had gotten quite tired of the classic, mid-50s journalist who shows up with a team and, in these armoured Land Cruisers, and who maybe asks their questions and then retreats to a city an hour or two away to their 5-star hotel, versus I was just, like a lot of the soldiers there fighting on the front line were my age, and being sort of like their peers, they opened up a bit more.
Wow, because I could see that. And it's funny, whenever I interview someone, Sam, who I know has a background in photography, I can generally always tell, maybe before I even know that fact about them, because there's something that speaks to you about the images. You know how to compose a shot, you know about the lighting, you know how to have a photo really tell a story. And when I came across your website there and saw the series of photos on there, like regardless of whether they're, wall photos from your time in the Donbass or something like that, to whether you're taking pics of people rock climbing or something, there's a story narrative that's going on there. But I wonder, you were saying you're a writer as well, like it's so different now how you're traveling, but I wonder how much knowing about the power of visual images to tell a story has shaped the way that you even view and travel as well. Not to mention just what you've visually seen in a war zone to how you view your perspective and your privilege to be travelling where you are in the first place.
Yeah, I would be honest, all the writing I do these days, almost all of it is just for myself. And I've always just found it a good tool to sort of get, I don't know, like people are like these really strange, fleeting things, right? Like the idea of who you are or who I am. We're these creatures of constant change. And, we could be in the shower one day and have the most life-changing epiphany, and then by the time we get out of the shower and we've had dinner, like that thought has slipped away. But I've always loved writing because it's like the only really concrete and somewhat permanent projection of ourselves. So I feel like whenever on this trip I've had some realization about myself, about the world, about life back home, the first thing I've always done is stopped and just jotted down those ideas, whether it takes 2 minutes or whether it takes 15 minutes, and then later elaborated more on that. And so I wouldn't call it a journal because I haven't been doing this regularly, sort of more when I have ideas. Yeah, just sort of like more permanence to try and like these lessons I've learned, try and put them down, really explore them within myself and what they mean to me. Because I know that once you leave Mongolia or once you have departed that really wholesome human interaction in like Kazakhstan or something, it will just slip away like everything else.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I think I've mentioned it in a very recent episode as well, what I'm about to say here. Because I'm not far removed from actually going and visiting Heinz Stucker, who is a man who, I would call him a photojournalist as well. I mean, he calls himself a storyteller, a traveller, a globetrotter. And he's 85 years old now, and he can't actually physically leave his bed. So the most travelled man in the world, who spent 51 years riding his bike to everywhere in the world, now can't leave his house. But in his mind, he's still travelling. And the reason because of that, Sam, is because he has every single memento from his travels surrounding him. So you go into his house, and it's photos on every blank space of the walls. He's got over 100,000 slide negatives in folders, in filing cabinets. He's got every single journal he's ever written. He has boxes and boxes and boxes of routes drawn out on paper maps in every single country in the world. And he has his journals, obviously, that he wrote and letters from people. And so he surrounds himself 18 hours a day with all these memories, which take him back to those moments. And it was an interesting thing to me. Like, I was the typical podcaster, how do you feel about not traveling now? Because I think what a cruel irony it is that the person who's traveled the most is now can't leave their bed, right?
Yeah.
But then he really put me in my place when he goes, but I'm still traveling. I'm permanently on my travels because of that. But the other thing that I learnt in that interview, and this is me coming around the houses to bring back a point, was he would specifically camp in places and take a photo of himself in a specific place because he knew that down the line he wanted to remember this. And he'd take a photo there and then he might write a few notes about it. And in a way, it's almost like you're aware that you journaling something is a way that you can guarantee you'll be able to remember it when in 3 weeks, 3 days, 3 years, 3 months, whatever it is, you would have otherwise forgotten about it. Like, you can always pull it out, read it, and it'll take you right back.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing I've observed with Heinz, and if I reflect back to other people like yourselves who I've interviewed, I think there is a self-awareness with some people to know that that's what they're doing that as well. Like, Luke, are you journaling your stuff?
I'll be honest, no, I did start out. I do have my notebook and pen, but that's primarily reserved for study.
Because you are studying at the moment, aren't you? In fact, are you both studying? I need to get this straight because I've got it as like student paramedics, and I want to understand what does that mean? Who's who? Are you both students? Is this like a long course that you keep at? Have you worked in it? Like, what's the deal?
Yeah, to answer who's who, I think we're the same person for the most part.
On paper, yeah.
We did meet at university in 2022, and we both study the same degree or degrees, nursing and paramedicine. So that's been 3 years of study, and then we've taken this year off to
experience stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, because like this is a recent friendship. Like we're talking 3 years now, right? Is your first mad sort of trip, long type of holiday, hitchhiking through India?
Pretty much, yep.
Who's responsible for that idea?
It just came about like it. We're not as cool as I'm probably about to make it sound, but it was like the middle of the night and we were abseiling somewhere in Victoria in the rain.
Can I just pause you there? Because I seriously was waiting for you to say it was the middle of the night and we were just finishing our third beer or third dinner or something like that. Sorry.
It was the
So hang on,
average.
the middle of the night and you're abseiling down something. I do love this.
This is not a regular Friday night. But we were in the Grampians and we're sort of looking down at the town of Halls Gap below, and like it's these little, twinkling lights in a valley, and the stars are above, and there's sort of this mist from the rain coming in. And yeah, we had uni holidays coming up. It was like getting an itch to go do something, and I was just reminiscing about how that scene there reminded me of my boarding school in India, or some of the places I'd been in India. And then we just got like talking about what we could do for a holiday, or should we go traveling somewhere? And yeah, I don't know. We both just said, why not? Like there'd been a lot of India that I hadn't seen. Luke had the idea that we should also, while you're in India, might as well go to Bangladesh as well. Like, what the hell?
Oh, wow. That's another level up. And no disrespect to India. I've only interviewed a few people who travelled in Bangladesh, and that has been intense. I mean, India, I haven't been to either country, putting that out there. I know that India is an intense place to travel as well, but I've heard Bangladesh even more so. Listeners, I've been using the Cyc Plus AS2 Pro tiny e-pump inflator on my rides recently, and it's honestly been super, super handy. When I first got it, I was a little bit skeptical. Would I actually really ditch my hand pump for something electronic? But I have loved it. It's super small. It packs easily into my little saddlebag without weighing me down. And what I love the most is actually the tyre pressure gauge. It's great because I can see exactly what PSI I'm putting in, which comes in handy whether I'm fixing a puncture or actually doing rides which switch between dirt roads and tarmac. The unit takes about 30 minutes to fully charge, and a full charge will inflate my tyres 3 to 5 times, which is plenty enough for most rides. If you want to check it out, I've got a link in the podcast show notes to Cyc Plus. And Seek Travel Ride listeners get 5% off. Simply use the code STR. It's been a solid little gadget for me, and it's definitely on my pack list for my bikepacking adventures. Okay, now back to the episode.
Yeah, I mean, many similarities. It's just as overly populated. I think Dakar, little city, is one of the
most populated.
Yeah. Yeah, when you say intense, our first kind of glimpse of Bangladesh was a kid that's quite graphic.
No,
actually.
it's okay.
Yeah, there was a group of people surrounding, like some sort of commotion going on, and so we popped our heads over to see. And a kid was just on the ground getting, pretty much beaten up by a bunch of men. And we were trying to figure out what was going on. One of the blokes spoke a little bit of English, and he said, thief. And he was outside a bookstore, actually, and I think in the early hours of the morning, middle of the night, he was trying to steal some books, and he got caught, and that's kind of how they punished him. And then once that was all said and done, the group dispersed, and the kid was kind of left, sad and sorry for himself. We felt that, obviously sorry for him. We're just outsiders catching a glimpse of what goes on.
Yeah. It is. It's like you flit a little sliver of a curtain opening into an insight into a culture that's totally not something you'd come across like randomly. And I don't know, there's an extra layer of it, and I don't know where I'm like, there's an extra layer of it for me, the fact that he's trying to steal a book.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they were hitting him with bamboo sticks to the face, to the head, and this guy was like, holding up his bloodied hands, trying to protect his face. And there was a whole crowd of people, and it, so bizarre, especially for us, I think, coming from a background in healthcare where we want to stand up for people who are being mistreated. We want to advocate for our patients and stuff. And now we see a guy who's our age, Bella, stealing a book which we love so much. And we've got, all this money that allows us to, comparatively at least, to, travel in these countries. And just some guy who didn't win the lottery of life and just like nothing that we really could do. So I think we just stood in silence and bared witness to it. And then walked off and bought ourselves like a hearty lunch because we could.
That's the hard flip of it, isn't it? Birthplace lottery there, birthplace privilege, like being able to do what we do. I'm not saying that what we do is easy. You've had some pretty hard days riding your bike in some pretty extreme places, and physically you have felt absolutely empty at the end of those days, but it has still been your choice and privilege to be able to do that. And then when you go to a world and you see the other side of that where through no fault of someone else's, they don't have that. Like, I have often wondered how it's been to marry that up. Like whether, like, how do you, like, you can't erase it from your memory. And I don't know what the answer on all this is. I don't even know if I have a question about it. But yeah, I would find it hard to wrestle with.
Yeah, I guess for me, prepared for the realities or exposure to all sorts of things when you travel into a new culture or place. And yeah, unfortunately that might be a side of a country or a place that you do see, and it's not really your place to intervene or do too much about it. And you don't want it rained into your mind after such a vivid memory. But yeah, just to understand, like you said, the position you're in, and we've made the choice to be here and experience as much as possible, and those are the kind of downsides that come with it.
Hitchhiking through India, what was that like? Was it as mad and wild as it sounds to me? Like, just even writing it out as one of my questions, India hitchhiking, raw experience must be wild and unexpected encounters.
Very much so. But before we go to that, if you don't mind, I just want to touch back on how these sort of raw and very confronting experiences have sort of opened my eyes to things. It's sort of put a whole, in some ways for me, a damper on this year. And there have been a lot of points of this year where I've just felt like the most selfish prick in the world. Back home in Australia, you're living a good life and you're still enjoying life, and you're going out and having a drink with your mates or going to the beach. You're still living in this luxurious way. But at least being part of the ambulance service, we both work for Ambulance Victoria. We both had volunteer positions back home as well. You are still amidst your life contributing to something bigger than you. And it's really sort of weighed on me and bothered me this year that I am out here just riding my bike, and this is pretty much an entirely self-serving thing. The amount of freedom that I have to be doing this, it's just so bizarre when you look at things that are happening in our world and even things that we have seen. And I've really admired a lot of other cyclists who don't have as much of a packed itinerary as we do, who stay in places for a while and volunteer or give back or just engage in the community a little bit more. And there's one memory in particular which stands out quite strongly to me. We were somewhere in Kyrgyzstan at a cafe after just having been spat out by the mountains, which almost broke us. The mountains in Kyrgyzstan, that was quite hard. And I was having this conversation with Luke at a cafe, and there was another bikepacker there, an American lady who'd been on the road for 2 years now. And I was explaining that, as much as we romanticize this whole leave your home and ride across the world thing, it's such a selfish pursuit in many ways. And she stood up to me and she corrected me from her own perspective as a woman. And as a man, this isn't a perspective that I'd ever thought about. But for her, being a solo female traveller, she was like, no, I think that I'm making quite an impact because I'm going out there, and all these, young little girls from all these very different cultures where aren't encouraged to participate in sport. They're not seen in those communities, and they don't see themselves as people who can be independent and who can go do things alone, and who, if they wanted to, could just uproot and travel And this beautiful American lady has been doing this for 2 years, and just every village she goes to, she's having these little girls run up to her, like, looking at me like, oh my God, if you can do something like this one day, so...
Yeah.
And, yeah, like, as a guy, obviously, we're already so free. Every society that we've gone to, especially those in, like, Central Asia and Turkey, you just see that these are such male-dominated communities where it's just, like, men are out on the street. You might go a few hours, like, before you see a group of women. So I don't know how much we bring to the conversation around that. Like, maybe we're inspiring, other guys who are already pretty free with a disposable income to go buy some nice bikes and go on a nice bike ride.
Yeah, or maybe, gosh, gee, did we get deep and meaningful on this episode, lads? I didn't think we were going to go here, but maybe there's a different perspective on this, and maybe it's actually the experiences that you have now will actually shape the conversations that you have when you are back at home about topics that you otherwise would not have. Like, that is something as well. And if it's anything I've learned from interviewing people who've had intense experiences of this thing, where your privilege is so blasted in front of you in big, bold letters with exclamation marks, you're so privileged to do this. It is the feeling of needing to pay it forward, needing to tell the truth, needing to actually advocate for people who can't advocate for themselves. You come back with a stronger sense of that.
Yeah, I very much feel that. Yeah, I think that's, after this year, my plans for what I want to do with the next 5 years of my life have, I don't know if they've changed very much, but I'm definitely a lot more, I've got a firmer belief in, like, what I need to do once I've graduated with this degree and, where I should go and where I need to go.
It's interesting, though, speaking with a solo female, and she sees that she's trying to be a role model for someone as well. So that's a different perspective, which I am a female that I wouldn't have necessarily. Oh, yeah. Big questions. I want to go back to wild experiences in India now, just to, totally pivot. To me, if there was ever a wild country to go hitchhiking through, India would have brought out some pretty intense experiences. Is that something that you guys are both seeking out, like an intensity of this type of travel, like especially seeking out a breakaway from the norm?
Yeah, I think I'd say so, definitely. Yeah, India for me, the travelling I'd done up until that point were in developed countries like Canada, New Zealand, Australia. So for me, I just wanted to dive into something just totally different culturally and in all sorts of areas. And India is the answer to that, I'd say, out of all the places in the world. And it helped that Sam had a bit of a background there as well. But the reason why we became good mates at university in the first place was because we kind of were, to an extent, a bit of the outcasts. We didn't...
Degree.
Huh?
In a nursing degree.
In the nursing degree, one of, or two of only like 6 or 7 males in our course, and really relate as well to maybe a few other people, kind of found each other in that. And then I was really interested in all his stories of, the war and climbing, abseiling, all that sort of stuff. And then I just come off the back of a surfing trip and around Australia. So, yeah, I think seeking just completely different and new things and throwing yourself into the midst of it is what we did in India. And hitchhiking was a great mode of transport to get around in such a wild country as well. Yeah, the Garbage Bag Boys, that name kind of stemmed from pre-India because we got ourselves 2 little bivvy bags. Well, bivvy's probably a bit generous.
Yeah, very generous.
Yeah, okay. I've heard, I think it was April Drage. I think she describes them as like plastic coffins. Yeah. But yours weren't even formal bivvies, were they?
No, I'd never slept in a bivvy before, but our housemate looked at them and he said, what the hell are these?
You bought garbage bags.
You pretty much bought garbage bags. Travel around India for 2 months sleeping in a garbage bag. We're like, well, I guess if you put it like that.
The name is born. You don't pick your nickname, it's chosen for you.
And then when we went to India and we started just recording the things we stumbled upon and sharing them with the world, especially in our first weeks there, running around Mumbai and going to the Dharavi slums and just, seeing some of the really tragically trash-burdened rivers there. A few of these videos went really viral and people looked at our name and assumed that we were environmentalists in India trying to clear up the garbage and stuff. And we're like, oh no, they've made this connection we didn't think about.
Did you, I think I came across a post with you guys. Was it with a German environmental company? Is it?
Plastic Fisher.
Yeah, and they are actually doing that?
We did, yeah. We got invited up to Varanasi to help out and spread the word. We were sort of shown their river cleanup efforts there, and we made a video with them. Yes, we really did become the garbage bag boys at that moment, but it was never the plan of it. It was never. I just remember all the comments being like, two more European environmentalists in India.
People think you're on your high horse preaching to everybody. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Because how many months did you spend hitchhiking through India?
2 months, India and Bangladesh.
Did it feel like 2 months? Did it feel like 2 years?
Oh,
I mean, compared to this
did
year,
it feel like? Yeah, we always compare this year to, we've got 4 more, the amount of time, 4 more Indias to get through.
In a way, both with India and with this trip, it's a way of condensing like a lifetime of experiences. Some people's lifetime experiences, you're doing them all. I'm not saying this is all that your life is going to experience, but I think you know what I'm getting at there.
yeah.
And I'm not saying that your days don't have routine about them, because there is a routine in doing what you're doing each day, but there are certainly unexpected moments that probably happen more often than would in your training days back in Melbourne.
Oh, every day is so different. Yeah. It's just...
But feels so similar at times. We keep saying to ourselves, like a mentor on the ambulance said, don't normalise per se, desensitise yourself to everything you see, because it isn't normal on every shift. It's not something the normal, like average person would see. And same with travelling. We catch ourselves going through the most beautiful places, or talking to an old Greek lady at the supermarket and having a funny interaction. And we really try to acknowledge those as like unique.
They're things you need to try and remember to write in your journal, Sam.
Yeah.
Because I think I did see a post about this. I don't know where you were, whether it was in Kyrgyzstan or Tajikistan, and you were on was it this? I think it might have been on the Celestial. I can't remember the last name of the route. Maybe it was on the Tian Shan Traverse. Either way, you're on a pretty hard-ass route, right?
Mm.
And you were saying, and this is an amazing view that before I did this journey, I would have been like taken aback by, and now this is just normal.
Yeah. And I think that's like something that comes with bicycle travel to some extent, because say you go to Thailand from Australia, right? Like you get a plane that's a few hours long, you go through an immaculate airport, and then you step out onto the streets, and it's just immediately a different world, like such a culture shock. And having that huge juxtaposition or like really rapid change in environment, like it really hits you where you are and what you're doing. Versus when you're on the bike and you're doing, maybe 40 to 100 Ks a day, day after day. It's sort of like a much slower, I don't know if you know the analogy of like the frog in the boiling water.
Yeah. How to boil it. Yeah. The
frog doesn't realise that it's boiling at one point.
No.
And I feel like that's happened so many times this year, because you move just slowly enough through these places that I just remember looking at my phone like a few days ago, and I've got like a gallery on repeat for my screensaver. And like photos from the Batang Valley are coming up, photos from Tajikistan or China or Vietnam. And I just look at them and I go, what on earth? You were there in this like crazy moonscape with red soil, you were in the bamboo forests of China, and like it just sort of hits in those photographs.
Yeah.
At the time it was like, yep, just another day, like another few dozen like kilometers from the day before. Yeah.
It's sort of like when human-powered travel, you can go so slowly that over a length of time you've gone so far, but in the moment it's never super different from the day before.
No. It's almost
you
like
go to the gym.
It's like almost like going to the gym or like any physical pursuit like that. And every day, it's a little bit different until one day you look in the mirror and your body's changed a lot, but like you haven't ever realised it. Like each day is such a minute change
Until you see the photos.
Until you see the photos and you're like, like I have changed.
I have to say, actually, there was a bikepacker that I've been following, Connor. Hi, Connor. I don't know whether you might have actually crossed paths with him in Mongolia.
Canadian New Zealand, Connor?
Connor JP.
Yeah.
We know.
There we go. You do know each other.
Hello.
But he just posted recently saying, this is the photo that scared me the most. And it was a photo taken of him just after he'd finished Central Asia. And he said, I weighed like 100 odd kilos before I left on this trip, and here I am 30 something kilos less. It's the most gaunt I've ever looked. It was after that session. So yeah. And again, it's one of those things that it's a stark thing when you visually see it, but day to day you don't necessarily notice it. I want to know who came up with this idea. Who came up with, like, you know, you organically abseiling in the middle of the night, you're thinking of hitchhiking through India. Who came up with the idea of let's ride from Vietnam to Spain?
I think, very rarely we find ourselves apart from each other. So every idea or everything we do is we're both together when it happens. Like this idea, which we were on an ambulance shift for like 72 hours. We were out in regional Victoria, and we had no patient call-outs throughout that whole 72-hour period. So, you know, usually we just study or read, or a lot of the time just chat about absolutely nothing and absolutely everything. And this is one of those times, and we found ourselves progressively throughout the 72 hours talking about life, as Sam loves deep and meaningful conversations. Why are we here? What should we do? How do we use our time as well as we can? And we talked about India and what was like kind of next. And we spent a good 14 hours one of those days. We were out in the back garden, and there was a footpath separating two patches of grass, and he would stand on one side of the grass and I was on the other side. And I was a conservative person who stayed and finished university and went to their job and all that. And he was arguing for the other side, like go out, take a year off, buy some bikes and explore Mongolia and the world. And
and like it started very differently. Like I think the initial idea was the year before this trip, I'd gone off with a mate from high school and done the Annapurna circuit, the bike out there. And I just, like, after 10 days of that, came back just rejuvenated, like so in love with life. What a beautiful experience that was. And at the same time, Luke and his brother were planning on using the upcoming university holidays to go traveling, just them two together. And I'd been raving so much about the beauty of bike travel that they're like, oh, maybe we could ride through Vietnam or through Cambodia. And I sort of jumped on that and was like, hey, I'm free, you know, like, how about I tag along? And they're like, yeah, why not? And it just grew from there to like, it just grew so quickly. And I think the first iteration of the idea was like, oh, why don't we do Cambodia and Laos? Like, that's crazy. And then the next idea came up of being like, oh, maybe we'd like ride across Russia, because I've just got quite a fascination with Russia and I've always wanted to go, and I thought maybe riding across Russia would be cool. And then it just snowballed all the way to it's like, why don't we ride across the world? And at this point, Bella, it makes us almost sound like a bit full of ourselves. But we sort of thought that no one had ever done that.
Do you know what that reminds me of? Awesome solo female traveller, absolute dead set legend, Steph Devery. Actually won, I think, Young Adventurer of the Year, Adventurer of the Year by Australian Geo. But she rode she did Sweden to Cape Town, but when she was dreaming up that idea, she didn't even realise that she thought she'd come up with it as well. Yeah. So it happens to the best of them, is what I'm saying.
We were not part of I'd done that bikepacking route in Nepal, but other than that, like, we weren't part of the cycling community. We didn't know about things, and we're like, oh, we can do this. And I remember, like, Luke breaking it to one of our housemates, the same guy who gave us our garbage bag.
Garbage bag boys moniker.
And Luke was like, yep, we're going to go ride across the world from Vietnam to Europe. And Toby was just like laughing at us. Like, no, you're not. Like, you can't do this. It's impossible. At this stage, we'd sort of started to like look a little bit more. And now at this point in our trip, it feels like, oh, you haven't cycled the whole of Africa? Like, who are you?
Yeah, I know. It's so ridiculous. Can I just say, as the host of a show that interviews people doing ridiculous stuff, like, I often joke, like, who am I? Am I interviewing like the 0.1% of the population that normalizes this behavior? Nothing you're doing is normal.
Not normal.
And then I have people that I generally want to talk about because they've taken like a 4-week trip somewhere and they're like, oh no, I couldn't come on your show. I haven't done anything exciting or crazy. And I'm like, 4 weeks away on a bike's still a pretty big deal. And
crazy.
That's what most of us do. Like, it's okay.
Yeah, you realise there's a community there for literally everything, no matter how niche or unique it is. I'm sure if you research it, you know, there's people rowing across oceans and a big community in that. So.
There's people walking across continents as well. I just interviewed Mark Gresser. Hey, Mark. Trek for Youth Mental Health. He's he rode from Perth to Paris first, so he sort of has pivoted from one extreme to the next. I spoke to him just a couple of weeks ago. He was in Uluru. He'd walked there from Steep Point, the most western point in Australia, and he's headed to Cape Byron, the most eastern point, right across the middle, and he's hauling a trailer that at times is weighing like 175 kilos.
I mean,
yeah, I know. He's a legend. Good on you, Mark.
Yeah.
So what you're telling me, though, is this first started, the genesis of this idea really started as that like couple of months off from uni break. The rolling ball of momentum, it's just got bigger and bigger and bigger. But clearly there was a point where the decision was made of 2 months isn't enough. Let's take a year off and go big or go home sort of thing. And I'm guessing then if we're starting here, why don't we go all the way that's possible before we hit an ocean sort of thing? And that's why Spain's like your pick?
Yeah, it is. Malaga in Spain. The reason for Malaga being the bikes were on a Melbourne-based bike brand, Curve, and they're opening up a store in Malaga. And they thought it'd be nice if we could finish up there and celebrate, finishing our trip.
I want to get to another aspect of your journeys, actually, and that is the type of routes that you are taking. I get an insight, and I sort of hinted at it in my intro as well, and it's so clear speaking to. You're not looking for the cookie-cutter adventure here. Like, you're not looking for the atypical... You're not on a Kentucky bus tour, for crying out loud. You're looking to go to remote places and experience things in a different type of way. And it's sort of evident in the route that you're taking as well. Now, there is an element of, if you do want to ride a bicycle all the way to Europe when you're starting from Southeast Asia, the Central Asian route, there's some things that are similar that people seek out there. But your route right from the start, like even the Ha Giang Loop, that's not an easy route to be riding a bicycle on. I know I've interviewed people who've done it, but by far and away, it's not like... A lot of people talk how Southeast Asia is the best place to start if you want to try bike travel because it's easy. There's 7-Elevens everywhere. There's great food everywhere. There's places to stay. But I would say the Ha Giang Loop's not easy from a physical point of view. You're starting there and then, like I mentioned, straight to China, total different culture again. The Gobi Desert, like wind-smacked for countlessly. I don't think you can ever be friends with the wind. And then it's almost like it levels up. And the reason I say this, and I realise it's a long way to asking the question, was when I was doing my research for you both and I was going through what you have been up to and what you've done is there's almost a pattern to your posts in that, I don't know if it's recency bias, but everything has been the hardest thing you've ever done. Like each day you're like progressing to the next level and then, oh, we've unlocked that level. Now we must progress to this level. And has that felt like what it's been? Like, have you felt like every route has just gotten ridiculously harder?
Yeah, ridiculously different, and I'd say probably harder as well. Actually, funnily enough, I said to Sam the other day, while heading through Turkey, we were just back on the roads, back on the highways, trying to get through the country, and I said it feels like we've done nothing this year.
Nothing hard,
because to us, the highways had become a pretty easy thing, and we'd spent a week or two on them now, and it just felt like we'd been going from one restaurant or place to the next, and then he quickly corrected me and said, look at what we've done this year. But I guess I was quick to forget some of those routes.
Listeners, if you absolutely love this podcast and you love tuning into the stories that I bring to you each and every week, you can help me and support the show by heading to buymeacoffee.com/Seek Travel Ride. Shout me a few virtual coffees and keep this podcast rolling. Back to the episode. Yeah, if there was one route that you would be happy to never have to be forced to do again, which one would it be?
I know Sam's answer, but the Gobi Desert. That was probably the same for me. The Gobi Desert was just hell. And we like talking about leveling up. We fast-tracked through China on a train because we were like, all right, we've been on the roads, we've warmed up, we want to get out there off-road, into the real adventure. So we took a train to the edge of the Gobi Desert and we said, it's time. This is what we're here for. It's been almost 2 months now. We're going to go off-road from east to west through Mongolia, through the desert and steppe. And I said, let's not rush into it. Let's just get a taste of it. It might be pretty hard. It might be difficult. And Sam was like, no, we either lock it in now or we done it all. And so we, developed like a 300, 400k route off-road through the Gobi. And, after that, our minds were made up. We weren't going to go forward with that plan anymore. Just with the corrugation, like you probably know, the headwinds, the sun, The sand, like I think 3% of the Gobi Desert is actually sand, and I think it feels like we went through that 3%.
Yes.
That 3% was where your route was?
Oh, I felt like it. And you're just pushing your bike for 4Ks and getting nowhere over 5 hours. Like, it just soul destroying.
Yeah, I came across a post of yours about it, and like this is reflecting back on it. So there's the benefit of reflecting and not being raw in the moment. You like after battling sandstorms, wolves, the odd sandworm. There's always humour in your post, lads. We have successfully collected enough spice for the next 9 months of bikepacking. The Gobi Desert has been one of the most difficult and draining places we have ever ridden. Yet, with it comes a unique feeling of accomplishment, and the wisdom we have learnt about life and ourselves will be forever imprinted in our minds, or at the very least burnt into our faces. It was obviously like you've lived through and experienced something. Yeah, you ordered the takeaway and you said add extra chili on top, and then like they added like, I don't know, 300 grams. It's like,
yeah,
an
overdose of it.
And like, oh man, the Gobi was its own thing, and it just felt so, for me at least, so unrewarding because we've got mountain bikes essentially with a pretty well geared to climb up hills all day, and there were just hours on end in the Gobi where we'd be in that lowest gear, just moving at like 4Ks an hour, but with our heart rates like pinned to 170
at max. Yeah. And you're just in flat sand or something, and with a headwind.
Oh, the headwind was so strong that there were times where you were on like a slight downhill, and if you stopped pedaling, you got pushed back up the hill. And it was just so silly. And like, mountains, I love mountains, and the reward there is, you go up, you get a view that changes. You get the joy of going down, or, even in Greece or Turkey, like you're jumping from one village to the next where there's food and cultural experiences or whatever. But in the Gobi, it was like, yep, wake up, suffer for like 12 hours, and then the place that you stopped that night looks identical to the place that you started.
There's no stark difference. There's no sort of thing on the horizon to aim for.
Yeah.
The same. Did you have at least some epic skies?
We did.
Yeah.
We absolutely did, yeah. That was pretty amazing.
The light pollution there wouldn't be very high.
Nah, not at all. But yeah, like I think, as said, like the initial plan was sort of... I can't really tell the story without introducing a friend of ours who... I don't think you could get him on the podcast, but if you could, God, it'd be worth it. He's called Akira. His English isn't great, but he's a great person.
He's Japanese.
And we met him as we were crossing
Is
the border.
this the old school tourer who's like touring off like just a photo of coordinates and stuff?
Yep, that's him.
Oh, his reputation precedes him. I would so have you on the show, Akira.
This guy's crazy. Like, yeah, as I said, met him as we were entering Mongolia, and he had the same route as us. And he was like, oh, all right, like, let's team up, let's do this. He's like, okay, no problem. And I think the day before we really went off grid into the desert, we were sort of like, asking him, you ready to go? Like, what's your plan for this? Like, we were quite nervous. And this lunatic has, respectfully, he doesn't have sunglasses. He doesn't have headphones. He doesn't have a hat. He doesn't have sunscreen. He uses a stove which runs on sticks to cook his meals, and he's taken it into the desert where there's nothing, right? And
is there even like dry cow dung or something he can burn? Like what?
Spend like 2 hours each evening collecting like spindrift, just enough to warm his like oats or whatever. And he didn't have a map. He had Google Maps screenshots. He barely had like any water. And this guy was on this super beaten up bike, like, we're running tubeless, thick tires. He's got really worn down, skinny tires. His bike's like heavier than ours is. The chain ring's already well and truly cooked. And this guy just sped ahead of us all day, every day. This little, and, we'd get to camp and we'd be like absolutely destroyed. No amount of sunscreen would like protect our faces. And we'd be sitting there like, wow, what a grim day. Can't wait to do that again. And we'd be like, hey, Kira, how are you doing? All he'd say is good. Everything we encountered, this guy would just go...
Is he like the ultimate Yoda?
Yeah.
In the bike world? Where he's like stripped it all back and he's fully zen. You know how people joke about practicing meditation? That's crazy.
Yeah.
On a stripped back old school, like everything. The idea that he doesn't have sunglasses. Something else, though, that I want to talk about is Mongolia full stop. Because, we can talk about the Gobi Desert and the winds that slammed you and stuff, but I feel like It's a landscape that captivates me, and I don't want to just hear the grim side of suffering through areas of it. So I want to hear some high moments, and I'm sure there must have been some high moments in Mongolia, right?
Oh,
One of you is shaking your head and one of you is nodding your head. So
well, I'm just shaking because the highs always involve some sort of low or grim moment.
they're all type 2 highs, are they? Like always better in the looking glass?
No, it was more like brief moments where we got rescued from the grimness of Mongolia.
Yeah, and had a beautiful high moment, such as, one that comes straight away to our minds is our first few days in the steppe. I think it was April, so it was spring, like
Yeah.
still very cold, temperamental weather, sunny in the morning all day, and then some dark, formidable looking clouds are coming. The storm was approaching, and we happened to come across another river crossing, probably the biggest of the day, and unpassable, I'd say.
Yeah.
But luckily there was a Subaru. There's always people in the middle of nowhere or wherever you think you're alone. There's always someone.
I've heard that about Mongolia specifically. Like whenever you think you're nowhere, then all of a sudden someone rocks up.
Very quickly we thought, entering Mongolia, we're like, all right, we're all alone. This is scary. Very quickly we realised we were never alone.
No.
The yurts or the gers in Mongolia are just scattered everywhere, and they just give you so much peace of mind and comfort knowing, there's a ger with a family and we can shelter there, or they're so wonderful, those people. So the Subaru crossed the river and I put my bike in and they happily drove us across as the storm was absolutely pounding down with snow and hail at that point. And once again, there's always shelter around. Abandoned buildings have been our best friend this year. And we saw what looked like a little shack. And I think it's a video on Instagram, and I'm like, so grateful for it. So we sped up there and then realised there was a padlock on the door and we were locked out in the middle of this storm, freaking out. And we ended up breaking it down with some sort of broken old car part that was around the shack, lying around, and we got ourselves in and sheltered for the night up until the next morning. Well, overnight
It wasn't a nice shack, like, to preface this.
The roof blew off it in the middle of the night. Let's be real here, right? Like this is
Yeah.
the intensity of the storm as well.
Yeah, the Mongol, and like we're in ultralight tents, which, through trials and tribulations, we've realised that they don't like the wind, and they'll, this would have literally torn apart the tent.
I've interviewed people whose tents broke in Mongolia. Hi, Claire.
Claire.
And in fact, actually, this is just a thought. It occurs to me, do you think it ever just drizzles in Mongolia? like
Not that
it
we're
feels
aware
like the
of.
weather is full on in extremes too, right?
Seriously, yeah. But like inside, once we got inside this shack, it wasn't someone's active home. Like this place had been abandoned for years, and it was the water was still coming in a bit, and it was full of like mouse shit everywhere and like old moldy fabric used for yurts. But we're like, look, we're at least out of the wind.
Oh yeah, it would have been like a godsend of being inside.
And
That's the
sometime during the middle of the night there, it had gone quiet. And we're like, oh, okay, maybe we overreacted. Like, this storm has passed. And we were both lying down, sort of like not asleep, maybe reading our books, maybe at 11 p.m. or something. And within 30 seconds, it went from dead still and quiet to like the most intense wind we've like probably ever experienced in our lives. And it sounded like a jet or something was taking off above us. And Luke and I were both like screaming at one another. I was like frantically trying to get out of my tent to see what was going on. And then halfway through, the sound got like so alarming and intense that I just curled up in a ball and put my hands over my head because I was like, the roof's coming down. And sure enough, like it sort of calmed down again after a few minutes. And I went outside and the snow was coming down sideways. And the roof of this little shack, which must have been there for 40 years, had been peeled off like a sardine can or something.
Like, what are the chances it does it when you're there?
I don't know, man.
Seriously.
I don't know. But for the rest of the night, like, the whole roof didn't peel off. It was just a section of it. But for the rest of the night, that bit of corrugated metal that had been ripped was just, like, flapping in the wind and making the worst sounds. This is where the story gets pretty, well, you'll see. A few hours later, we wake up after a pretty miserable night, and I go outside to relieve my bowels, and I'm, like, squatting next to this shack, trying to get out of the wind. It's still pretty cold and miserable outside, must be sub-zero. everything we've got is wet from the day before, from all the river crossings and from the leaking inside the little shack. And I see down in the valley below a Land Cruiser crossing the river, which we'd crossed the day before. And I was like, okay, there's no way that they can see me. There's no way that they care. And I'm still squatted over behind this shack of a building. And like 3 minutes later, the Land Cruiser pulls up like right next to me in front of the shack. And I'm still there with my pants down, not happy to be, alive at this point in time. And there's this Mongolian guy and his wife who are like a meter from me in their car, just staring at me. I'm just like sitting there.
You're in the middle of doing a poo.
Middle of doing a poo, and I'm like screaming at Luke, and I'm like, there's a car outside, man. And Luke's like, oh, so classic.
You're there in the most vulnerable position of your life, and then is that the owners of the shack like actually staring at you from their car?
Yeah, so we ended up having about a 2-minute staring competition. And I don't know, man, like 4 months into the trip or whatever, I was just like dead-eyeing them pretty much. And eventually I win the battle and they throw the car into reverse and back up to the shack. At which point I think Luke opened the door and sort of timidly poked his head out to see if they were still there.
They were staring right at me this time. And instead of entering my own staring competition, I retreated back into the shack very suspiciously and guiltily and met them about a minute later, and they obviously weren't too happy about the lock being broken. Yeah, pretty much just disrespecting their shack.
It's not that your intention... Well, I mean, you did break into it, but there was sort of an extreme reason to do that. I don't think you would have broken into their shack if you thought everything was going to be peachy that night.
No, and I think thankfully enough they understood that so much that they kind of said sternly, come down to Edder and follow us. So about 2 kilometres down the road.
They escorted us all the way.
Yeah, not knowing what lay ahead for us. And there were about 5 Gers lined up. Of course, there was a dog out the front. Dogs everywhere in Mongolia barking at us. And they invited us into their Ger. And we ended up turning such a terrible experience or first interaction with someone into something just was so profoundly beautiful for us. There was about 3 families living there and they gave us tea. We took off our socks and shoes, dried everything in the fire in the middle of the Ger and had some Mongolian, buz, some dumplings and food, and stayed there for about 2 hours. And they were just so welcoming, and we just couldn't believe how, if that happened back home, someone did the same to
No way, you'd call the cops.
Nah,
like
last thing you do is inviting them into your home for a cup of tea.
That is a wild story. There's elements of that story you couldn't even fictionally try to think of making up. Do you know what I mean? I often think the stuff that happens on these adventures, you couldn't even fabricate it. Had it not happened, you wouldn't even think of it as a story itself. I remember, I don't know which one of you it was, but I think it was said about Mongolia that it really tested you, the landscapes and all of this sort of stuff. There was beauty in it as well. It had the worst cuisine of anywhere, but it was also the place where you had the best meals. And when I read that, what I wanted to know was it more that idea of it wasn't the food you were eating, but it was the circumstances of the people you were surrounded when you were eating with them? Or was it a case that it had the best meals because from a hunger point of view, like you hadn't had food for ages and then all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, wow, I can get some bread?
That was sort of what came from one of my journal entries where just after another long day, I think we just finished another part of the bikepacking route and we'd been living off plain oats and rice and just, pretty miserable breakfasts and dinners. And we had this one big push through the rain and the snow to the town at the end of the route. And we got there and they served us up with fatty, really chewy yak meat and just some rice and some Heinz ketchup. And it was probably the most beautiful thing I've ever eaten. But no, it was quality of the food is pretty basic. There's no spices or anything, but just the hunger and the hardship that was leading up to that food made it so magical.
Yeah. It takes me to a previous guest, Rob McLennan, and when he was talking about he had some pretty challenging times riding down all the way down the west coast of Africa. And he finished that journey now and is adamant that plain rice or beans is the best thing in the world. And he will cook himself a plate of just plain rice and just be as happy as Larry with that, you know? So
Yeah, not sure if that'll ever be us.
no, I don't know.
That's another level.
I think the other thing Rob loved was melon milk, but you have to listen to that episode to get the context for that. From Mongolia, if I'm correct, I think you went back into China, didn't you? And then I guess you obviously then crossed over to make your way through ultimately the Pamirs, right?
Yeah, back into the Xinjiang province of China in the northwest, back into the most amazing cuisine ever. And then, into Kazakhstan, and finally we'd been waiting for some mountains, and the Tian Shan Mountains awaited us there before the Pamirs.
Was this where you did the Tian Shan Traverse?
Yes, yeah. At the beginning of Kyrgyzstan, we went essentially straight into the Tian Shan Traverse, which was...
I want to know, how much of this had you pre-researched? Like, I'm guessing obviously you knew these routes were there, but how deep did you go into what you could expect when you were there? Because I want to understand expectation v reality.
Yeah, I think at the beginning, not really much, to be honest.
Like nothing.
More so than when we entered the Bartang, and we'd done a few routes up until then, and we entered the Bartang Valley in Tajikistan with zero preparation, zero idea. None of us had really any food entering. We'd become so complacent with this riding thing. We're like, it's all downhill. We'll get it done in 4 days. And yeah, that's when I kind of bonked one of the days, and I had heat stroke, dehydrated, and probably hypoglycemic. I had no sugar in my body. So for the Bartang Valley, there was zero preparation. But the other routes also,
I feel like it was always like the day before we would actually properly read the route itinerary and be like, oh, there's no food for like the next 500 Ks. All right, that'll be fun. You know, and then we'd go load up at the last supermarket we found. But there's a bit more of like a philosophy sort of tied into this, where over the year, one of the many lessons I think we've learned is that like when you have no expectations of something, it is so much more beautiful. For example, China, right? Like we talked about China, we knew we had to go through it. But for us, until we entered China, it was this sort of just like grey mark on the map. You know, this huge country, and growing up in Australia, like we'd always sort of heard that it's just an industrialized landscape. It's a police state. The people aren't friendly. Like, you know, some of the habits like spitting or something are like a bit unhygienic or something. It just wasn't a country we were really excited about. And we went into China like, all right, it's going to be a month or two of just head down and riding through these like industrial scapes all day. And then finally we'll get to Mongolia. And then we entered China, and it ended up being like one of our favorite countries from the trip because no expectations. And everywhere we went, we were met by respectful people. We were met by the cleanest cities we'd seen all year, by cycle lanes, by beautiful nature and stuff as well, which we really didn't expect.
Good food too, I've heard.
Oh, mate, the best food you could imagine. Like,
yeah.
So many nights where I've laid in my tent just like fantasizing about going back to China just to eat more dumplings. But then you compare that to, you know, countries like, or routes that we've done in like Central Asia, where you do a bit more research, or you do just hear everyone talking about them. Like even Connor and stuff, who we spent a few days with, just, Central Asia is amazing. It's this, it's that, the mountains are this and that. And then when you do finally rock up to those places, because you've researched or conversed or just thought about them so much, you get to these scenes and you're like, oh, yep, tick. It's like you're ticking a box that you knew was already there.
Yeah, as opposed to the raw thing of totally unexpected.
Yeah. So we've like actively tried to sort of turn a blind eye to several things, experiencing it from ourselves, from a blank canvas, and just being like blown away both by the highs but also by the lows of places. Yeah, I think I want to take it back home as well.
I remember very, very early days of starting this podcast, I interviewed 2 other awesome adventurers, Roxy and Tommy. Tommy's from France, Roxy's Polish, and they rode from France to Australia. They're in Australia now. Hey, legends. Actually, they're also riding curve bikes. There you go.
I was just thinking, that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember asking them very early on in the pod about, you know, what were they looking forward to and stuff. And Roxy had said they had a saying, if I may not be 100% correctly remembering it, but it was along the line of no expectations, no deception.
Yeah.
And so even on the other side of that coin, you were talking about you ticked things off because you'd heard to expect this, but they were sort of thinking like, don't go into it thinking I'm going to see the most amazing mountains in my life, because maybe they're not as amazing as you actually thought they were, or as amazing as someone else has described. And so you'll feel let down. And so There is that balance, because I think that's one of the things. There's people who want to plan every single day and know what to look forward to. And there's people who just want to maybe be like Akira and just go out into the and, go with the stick stove and just make it through. But there is that balance of you need to know enough to be prepared to do it, but also there is a beauty in everything being brand new world every day and not knowing.
Yeah, so much beauty there.
In saying that, the Tian Shan Mountains were the most beautiful thing we've ever seen. Well, I've ever seen.
Because you've seen a few mountain ranges now. Tian Shan, I imagine, is just next level, right?
Yeah, Tian, and we had a fair bit of expectation leading into that. Just naturally, it was probably one of the most excited places we had in a year kind of planned. Yeah, I think the first day literally was just, there was three of us, Sam, myself, and a Kiwi bloke, Will, who was still with. We'd been searching for, the term freedom for the whole year, and I think we got as close as we did to that word in the Tian Shan Mountains.
What was it about being there that made you feel so free?
Just when you looked at the situation and the circumstances we were in objectively, we were sleeping away from, you had the nomads or herders nearby, but away from most people, next to this flowing river with fresh mountain water, mountains either side of you, and you wake up for sunrise in the morning, walk out of your tent, go for a dip and read your books and make a coffee and not worry about anything else in the world. That's, to us, that was freedom, pretty close to it.
When you said it was the first time you felt pure freedom in the whole year, talking about expectations and perceptions and reality and stuff, was there an expectation that you had yearned for that feeling for so long? That was it a surprise that it took so long to feel that?
Was it a surprise? Yeah, I guess so. I think we probably thought from day one we were on the open road with just us and our bikes that we'd feel that way. But I guess when you're, surrounded by urban places and other people and, you can't just roll into a patch of land and drop and sleep and set up your tents wherever you want, or for a camp spot and you have to search for your dinner but out there, I guess, and even Mongolia, you couldn't just set up your tents because it was blowing a gale and your tents would just completely get torn up.
Yeah, because there is that element of Mongolia, isn't it? It's like the weather is, like the wind is next level. I think I'm featuring the updates of Rebecca Gross periodically as she makes her way from Austria to, she's in Japan now. But when they came from Mongolia they're coming from west to east. And he said every single person that they passed was saying, you're going to have the best wind direction. It's just awesome because everyone else was like you guys and getting absolutely brutalised. But to be fair to Rebecca, she said for some reason they had great tailwind for a day and that was it. And it was brutal the rest of the time.
And when you talk about, how much do you research stuff, I probably should have researched that a little bit more, that we were entering the Gobi Desert in Mongolia in famously the windy season. And until we rocked up in the Gobi, we didn't have any idea about this. And I remember our third day in the Gobi, we were still in China and the wind was just so extreme. I got blown off my bike twice because it caught the frame bag. And we pulled into this little restaurant and there was a Chinese soldier there and he spoke some English and we asked him some questions. And we're like, is this normal or is this like a freak event? And he's like, no, this is the windy season. It is like this. This is actually a good day. It's like this, but worse for the next 2 months, coming from this direction. It'll be worse in Mongolia. And we're like, there's no way this is true. But sure enough.
He wasn't lying to you.
No, for what seemed like the next 2 months, we had a headwind every single day.
But it wasn't just like a little light breeze. It's like I said before, it doesn't seem to just drizzle in Mongolia. It was huge apocalyptic storms. And I imagine the wind was exactly the same, like being blown off your bike. Oh my gosh. Actually, how can I not talk about burrito when we're talking about Mongolia? This is like the most heartwarming story of your trip. Maybe you're sick of talking about it. I don't care because it's the cutest little thing I've ever seen and I'm going to make you talk about it now. For listeners that don't know what I'm talking about, who is burrito and what is the story?
So this was this is long after we'd left the Gobi. We'd now decided to go to the north of Mongolia to chase the steppe and to get some mountains in. And we were on our second day of a route developed by Curve Cycling. They do an expedition there each year. So if anyone's interested in that, Curve Expeditions, go check it out. And second day of the route, we made it to this mountain pass and there was a road going down left and there was a pretty steep, just gravel side of the mountain on the right. And I've sort of got a background in mountain biking and the bikes were on Curve GMX Pluses. They're pretty aggressive in terms of geometry. They've got super wide tires. And so I was like, hey, I've got a mountain bike, time to use it. So I said, hey, Luke, I'll meet you at the bottom. And I sort of went down this pretty gnarly and steep side of the mountain, just having a blast, being a bit reckless. And as I was trying to reconnect with the path and the trail, I was just riding and so far away from the nearest road or trail, just riding on this Mongolian grass. And I see this little furry figure up ahead. And I ride over to it and I get to it and it stands up and just looks at me. Oh no, I don't know what to do. So I had my Insta 360 on my bike and I just hit record and I just sort of stopped for a few minutes and thought, what should I do here? And I'm looking around and I see a whole herd of yaks, maybe 2 kilometers further down the valley. I'm like, there's probably no one who's going to pick up this little guy. And he was pretty fresh. He still had his umbilical cord sort of hanging off.
He's so furry and cute. Sorry.
So furry.
He is.
And yeah, I just lay my bike down and I sort of assessed the situation. And I was like, okay, I'm either going to have to carry this guy 2Ks down the valley and deposit him with the other yaks and then walk back and grab my bike. Or maybe I could squeeze him into my pannier. So I rearranged my stuff. I got out my blanket and he wasn't actually that scared. He came up to me.
He looks like he's loving life.
Yeah, he was pretty curious. I mean, I don't know how long he'd been out there for, but after a few different attempts, I figured out that I would swaddle him in my blanket. So I rolled him up and strapped him into the pannier and sort of made sure that he could still get air and, he wasn't distressed or anything.
You did a little shake test too. I thought that was really smart.
Rattle
Safety
test, yeah.
first. Safety first.
Yeah, I was a little bit concerned for him. I was like, what if he starts freaking out halfway down? Or I don't know. But yeah, put him in there and just started slowly rolling down the valley, checking on him every few minutes. Had to do a river crossing with him, which was quite interesting to get to the other yaks. But as soon as we got within earshot of the other yaks, he started, or she, I don't know, yelping out to them and they started replying. And I was like, oh, wow.
Oh, gosh. That's a little... Sorry, I'm trying not to be too emotional, but
Yeah, I was like, we might be onto something here. So I unpacked him from his pannier. He was in a tailfin pannier, which... yeah, shout out to Tailfin.
Yak approved, baby yak approved.
Baby yak approved through and through. And then these yaks came up sort of, still a bit skittish, but sort of close enough. And I unwrapped him, put him on the ground and sort of watched for a few minutes. And he did walk over to this big mama yak with a carbon copy of Burrito, which must have been a sibling of his. And he went over and smelt the yak. The yak went over and smelt him. And after a few minutes, it was an acknowledgement and all 3 of them walked off into the distance. And I was like, pretty cute. The other side of the story that didn't go out when we made the post on social media was that later that night, we did inform the next group of shepherds that we found that, hey, we did find this yak in the middle of nowhere, maybe go check on it. And it turns out this is a pretty common occurrence.
Yeah, okay.
Apparently yaks are notoriously bad mums. And later in Mongolia, we actually stayed at a yurt, once again rescuing us from the crazy weather up there. And they had a pen next to their main yurt, just full of lost baby yaks that they had retrieved from the wild.
Oh, wow.
They were all wearing hand-knitted sweaters.
Oh, no. Do you have a photo of this? Oh,
I don't
sorry.
have a photo of this. It was very dark at the time and we were just trying not to freeze to death as per usual in Mongolia. But I just pointed it out to Luke. There would have been 20 of them all in bright or polka dot sweaters, all just sort of chilling around in a pen.
So cute.
And
wow, yeah.
pretty cute, yeah.
Life is hard for little burritos.
And there are hundreds of wolves up around there, which is why they have such aggressive guard dogs at all of their to sort of protect against them. And yeah, they're a real issue. If you go there at the right time of year, I think just after winter, you can hear the nomads shooting wolves because the wolves are hungry and trying to get to the livestock. But yeah, we didn't really see any, but apparently they are just everywhere.
Yeah, so they're ever present, but they're wily as well. They're hidden, sort of. Wow. Birds of prey would be big around there too. I imagine eagles, vultures, all those sort of things too.
Everywhere.
It's sort of a scenery that emits that type of, I don't know, that type of life cycle about it too. I can just sort of see, life is hard on the steppe for humans, for animals, for birds, for anything that lives there. Everything must be tough. But wow, what a raw experience. And again, unexpected. You also had the experience of the dog that befriended you that would have been tormenting as well because I think didn't it follow you for a few days or something?
Yeah, it was On the burrito video, it was funny, like a few people, who have a good idea of the life cycle over there sort of commented on that and being like, oh yeah, nice. Like there are a bunch of wolves or eagles watching and we're like, easy dinner, sorted, ready to go. And I've just come in and like robbed them.
Oh, yeah, like you're interfering with a natural life cycle. I think, wasn't there a BBC documentary about like little penguins that were going to come to their end, and then I think the filmmakers actually stepped in? I think I have seen that before. But I want to take you were talking about wolves. Makes me think of dogs, because dogs are definitely something you encountered a fair bit, and I think it was actually in the Caucasus where you are, and I can't remember if it was Georgia or Armenia, but there's footage of you guys and you're with a couple of other bike travelers and you're like, okay, here the dogs come, here's a friendly one. Oh no, this one's definitely not friendly. And it's sort of the first time I've actually seen on film the strategy of like, circling together, guarding yourselves with the bikes, put around you so they can't move. I think you can hear someone saying, oh, can we pedal yet? Can we pedal yet? And it's like, no, we've got to keep walking. Because I've interviewed so many guests, guys, that talk about those scenarios, but like actually seeing it actually play out puts me right there. How are you with dogs now? Like, are you a bit on edge? Are you like, oh yeah, nothing surprises us anymore, we've got this covered? Or
Yeah, you're still always on edge because from our experience and what we've heard from other people's experiences, they very rarely actually attack you. We haven't heard of many people being bitten or anything, but they're there as shepherd dogs or guard dogs, and they're just doing their job essentially, so they're sussing you out. But it doesn't change the fact that there's some of them are like half polar bear looking dogs and huge scars on them and blood running from their face. Like, yeah, it definitely puts you in a bit of a fight or flight.
especially when there's like gangs of them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look, you've dealt with many of them already. You're probably really well seasoned in dealing with them. But I mean, you're in Greece now, and Greece definitely has a reputation for a lot of these dogs around as well. So I imagine it's at the back of your mind, maybe, or are you just not thinking about it until you hear the and then you see them coming up?
I think we got it figured out now. You kind of just squirt water into their eyes.
I've heard of that being a really good strategy, actually.
They kind of freeze on the spot, and then you cycle past them and they usually don't chase you after that.
Because I've also heard like faking to throw a rock at them as well is another strategy that people use. Pretending that you've picked up a rock and throwing it. Some people have had to throw rocks because they have. And I mean, I have spoken to people who have been bitten as well. So it does happen, not often, but it can do.
Yeah. Prior to this trip, I was a dog person. Sam's a cat person. It's unfortunate because I've become more of a cat person this year, but Sam just doesn't stand the dogs at all one bit.
There was a point I just got so sick of them. Like, I'm a peaceful traveller. I'm staying out of your way, and there's these bloody dogs coming down from the hills and just absolutely losing it at me. And I remember reading Matthew Crompton, the Australian bikepacker who wrote Roads Towards the Supreme Fiction and established the Bartang route. But he wrote about his experience in China with dogs, and like he was being harassed by some of them there. And an old lady who must have been like 80 or something picked up a rock from the side of the road and just like hurled it at this dog, which was going after Matthew, and hit the dog like perfectly square in the middle of its head. And the dog sort of like whimpered and then like retreated. So it seems to be like quite a normal way of dealing with them. I have since, when they're quite aggressive, have since started throwing rocks at them as well. My aim is pretty abysmal. I've never actually hit a dog, but as soon as they see the rocks flying towards them, like even packs of these just ferocious dogs will just like scatter.
Does it take a while to get your heart rate down from those sort of moments? Or like I can't imagine you're like dead calm doing it either. Like it would be like not a great situation, right?
Oh yeah.
Nah, and man, like I'm pretty scared of them, and I actually did have a dog nip me this year. At the most unexpected time. I was outside a police station. I was off my bike. I was just going to go talk to the cops about something. And this like very friendly looking lab or like lab breed was just sitting behind me. And out of nowhere, it ran up, barked at me while I had my back turned to it, just walking along. And it grabbed my leg and it like, thank God it just went into like the trouser.
Yeah, no drawing of blood or anything. Yeah.
Like that absolutely freaked me out. I was like, oh my God, like maybe they are actually trying to get you in some circumstances. And the police guys, like, they rushed over and started like kicking the dog.
Oh yeah, there's no great situation here, is there? There's no. It was better when we were talking about burrito.
Yeah, burrito, much more wholesome.
Yeah, much more wholesome. Not so scary are the little baby yaks.
No,
gosh,
it's hard to figure out what to do with them. But like, there's the shepherd dogs, which are pretty scary, but then there's also the guard dogs, which are like
worse.
terrifying. And one that we came across in Armenia as well. Like, and these are dogs who, in a lot of these parts of the world, like from a young age, they are tied up 24/7 and they are just trained to be as aggressive as possible.
It sort of doesn't compute to us. Like, you know, I'm an Aussie. Yeah, I live overseas, but it doesn't compute to me that there are dogs that are trained for that.
Yeah.
There is nowhere in Australia where I am scared about dogs.
No, same here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but these guard dogs, like the one that, you know, sort of sticks in our memory, once again, classicbikepacking.com just took us through like someone's property on which this dog lived, like following the route. And this dog was just so ferocious, and it was attached to a chain, but that chain was then attached to a piece of rope that was like really frayed. And this is the kind of dog that, like, if it got off, it would absolutely kill you.
Rip you to shreds. Yeah. So you're watching this tenuous rope.
Oh, it's...
Oh, no. I did not sign up for this. I did not know. I would be Bella out.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, we've only had a few of those cases, but, like, yeah, if those dogs did come off, or even those shepherd dogs that we encountered in, like, the mountains of Armenia, if we did anything to piss them off, they would just, like...
Not even think twice of ripping you. No, it's their job, and that's how they've been reared to be as well. In the Pyrenees, we have they're called the Patous, which is the big Pyrenean dogs. They look like big, fluffy, white golden retrievers. They're huge, but they're trained with the flocks to protect them, and that is their job. And there's signs up, like on hiking trails and stuff, sort of saying what you should do, and it was like, you know, be meek, turn around, never look them in the face, don't shout, don't be aggressive, and all this sort of stuff. But I have to say, when I've been in the situation, it's just like, oh no, just get me out of Dodge. Like, I do not want to be here.
terrifying.
Absolutely. What was it like leaving the big, you know, Central Asian mountains behind? And then, because I think you took a flight from Dushanbe to Tbilisi. Yeah. What was it like then landing there and then starting the next sort of adventure? And actually, a question before that, like, do you plan like rest days in all of this? Like, you're not literally going from Tian Shan to Bata, or maybe you are there because there's not much in between. But like, are you planning like little? Okay, when we land in Tbilisi, we're just going to have 5 days of chill, or what's going on?
Yeah, I think definitely we left Central Asia very excited to fly to another part of the world, not slowly expose ourselves to another country, like just taking that flight, going into places that had a lot more infrastructure, once again, better food, tap water. And we were quite burnt out by the end of Central Asia after the Celestial Divide, especially in Kyrgyzstan. And we were meeting 2 friends there. And for a long time, we'd been telling ourselves, like, slow it down. Let's actually, like you said, have some rest days and don't feel the need to always be on the go, which is, we figured, easier said than done, because you know you have to get to Spain, or you know you have to get to your next place. I'm sure a lot of people talked about this destination focused.
Yeah, I guess there's another element of it though. Like, you know, when we've spoken about it a few times already, your route from, you know, northern Vietnam to Spain, there are sections where every bike traveller, there's no easy way. Like, even if you're just crossing long stretches of the desert in Uzbekistan, there's the mental fatigue that comes with that as well, right? But your route is particularly off-road and particularly testing and challenging, self-chosen, like no one's holding a gun to your head saying you must ride these routes. I could tell, and it might have been the Celestial Traverse? It might have been during that particular route where I'd seen a couple of posts and it was just like, we're broken. This is the worst we've ever been. This is us pretending to be really ecstatic about the views. This is us being, it was sort of like an Instagram virality type of video. In those moments, are you ever just thinking, screw this, let's just get to Europe and take a Eurovelo 1 or something? Like, is there part of you that thinks that you could actually travel in that manner? More to the point, because from the outset, you're talking about, even before getting together, Sam, you're doing the Annapurna circuit on a bike. And I know I've interviewed many people who've done it now, but it's still not massively the done thing. It's pretty darn hard. You're abseiling in the middle of the night. You're hitchhiking through India. Like, there is an element where you are both seeking out the wilder, harder stuff. Do you ever think you've just had your fill of that and you would actually really just love a beautiful flat bike path like a Four Rivers Loop in Korea or something like that?
It's definitely us now.
I think it's like the yin and yang of everything. We did have recently in Turkey, it was probably only 20 Ks, but we had bike path along the Mediterranean.
Oh, magic, right?
oh my God, it felt like being home. It just felt so nice to just be able to like cruise and take in the world and it's flat for a little bit. And it felt like such a relief from, where we'd come from. But I don't think you can have one without the other. Like you spend, 4 weeks just tearing yourself to shreds on the Tian Shan or the Celestial Divide. And after that, you're like so thankful of being back on a road where it's easy. And then you do that for 2 weeks. And then you're like, oh, this is actually kind of boring.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm with you there. I moved to a very mountainous part of France for a reason. I really love the hills.
Yeah.
And I always joke, broken record on this. I know it's super fans. I'll say it again. The worst type of ride I could ever do would be a flat rail trail or a canal path. Like I bonk like you did in the Bartang Valley, Luke. Like I cannot, like mentally, it's Bella out. But there is a happy medium. There is a middle ground, lads. Like it doesn't need to be an 8 or a 9 out of 10 bikepacking route or the 1 out of 10 Eurovelo. I feel like there are some that are like 3 or 4s. Like, would you be tempted to maybe adjust to that? Or do you think mentally now, because you've proven that you can do the hard stuff, do you think there's an element of you that likes the satisfaction of being able to look back and say, I've done the hard stuff?
I think like we haven't specifically chosen like the 8 out of 10s. It's just that the 8 out of 10s have been the only thing really between the start point and Spain.
Yeah.
It's not like there were other options out there. Oh, the 4 out of 10. Like it's always just been like next route is just as cooked as the previous one.
So what's the plan with Europe now? Like, you're in Greece now. And Europe's coming into winter, which isn't super, super warm in a lot of places there. But what's the plan on how to get to Spain? Like, what routes are you thinking of there? Because I'm guessing the high mountain routes, they're sort of out of the question, aren't they, because of winter?
In the last, week, our goalposts have sort of shifted because we have, incorporated this whole, slow down, be present. We lived in a cave with other bikepackers for 8 days in Turkey. We spent some time, exploring Tbilisi and just doing other things as well.
This is the reality, and this is stuff that needs to be said out loud sometimes, because I think there's an element where people only see the Instagram high moments of everything. And I could see you guys showing the reality of actually what it's like. We're actually broken. It's not actually fun every day. The views don't look amazing to us, even though they damn well should, but we're just that done with it. I think this is the side that's important to share. No shame in it. My gosh, if all you did was say, we got to Greece, thank you later, now we're going to take a ferry to where are you ending? Malaga?
Yeah.
I really hope no one would judge you. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and there are definitely some puritanical cyclists out there who are very proud of the fact that they have ridden every kilometre.
Yeah.
And respect to them. I don't feel like we're in competition with them. We don't feel like that's where the value of our tripper experience sort of comes from. And, you sort of touched on the Celestial Divide being a breaking point for us. A lot of the sort of realizations that came out of that, it wasn't just that this is hard. Yeah, it's all been very hard this year. But it was also the realization that so much more of who we are as people has been left behind. We've got so much meaning in our lives from working on the ambulance together, from studying at university and being in this never ending.
Yeah.
From our friendships, from our other hobbies that we have, family. And so that was sort of what was really hitting home. And I was like, oh, wow, just more mountains. And I think there was a point where it felt like, if you spend 3 weeks in Melbourne or something, and then you spend a weekend away out in the Grampians or Wilson's Prom, these beautiful natural places, everything there is magical, right? Every tree is beautiful, the ocean is incredible. But when you're in that environment for 7 months straight, a mountain pass becomes as normal to you as a bus station in the city. It's just your entire world. And so, yeah, I think we've realized, this whole trip has been about growth for us and realizations. And we're sort of at the stage now where because we do have to go back to university at a fixed date and we do have to, get back to studying for a very vigorous year ahead. And so we're we could just go back in the highways and do 160k days, putting our head down and just wear ourselves into the ground again and make it to that sort of arbitrary endpoint. Or maybe we slow down, sort of enjoy the warmer parts of Europe while we can still be in them, and end the trip a little bit time-wise, but also length-wise, end it a little bit earlier and take the freedom that we have, do other things. And I don't think there's any shame in that. I think at the beginning we were very we're going to ride the whole way, every kilometre. And as we've gone on, we're just there's actually no points. These aren't our goals. There's no point sticking to this vigorous plan.
Yeah.
That just reminds me of Fergal, Rossi Dolzy, and
Hey, Fergal, legend.
we met him in Vietnam. Absolute legend.
Where did you meet Fergal? Where did you see Fergal?
At the beginning in Hanoi, Vietnam.
Oh, wow. Because he did the Ha Giang Loop as well.
He inspired us to do it, yeah.
Speaking with Fergal about it, I think he did it absolutely hungover.
Oh, yeah, he's a madman.
He's insane.
He set out to do 11 months from Ireland to Australia, and he said very quickly realised that this will be well over 2 years, because it's not just about getting from A to B on bike. You know, he's wonderfully raising money for 2 charities, and I guess part of him has to ride the whole way, but slowing it down and having experiences in each place is much. You don't want to miss out on that.
There's 2 elements of what you were saying there as well, and to what you were saying, Sam. Like, there's an element where doing this has disconnected you from what your identity is. Like, it's disconnected you from your community. And so it's not just the 3-week holiday or the long weekend either. So there's that side of it as well. It also reminds me, I mentioned him already. We were talking about Hines, who, he travelled for 51 odd years. But the one thing that he told me was it was the encounters and the experiences that he had that determined where he went and how long he stayed wherever he went. And I remember him telling me once, I think he was somewhere in South America, it might have been in Argentina or Chile, and someone met him and was like, wow, I've always wanted to meet someone like you, come back to my house and my ranch. He was like, sure. And they actually drove, I think it was either 300 kilometres or 3 hours inland, back the way that Hines had been. And he spent 5 days there, and it was an amazing experience. And if he was an EFI rider every effing inch, he would have missed that.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a right or wrong way here. Some people will do the everything, and that's their deal. Some people will set out to do it and then change their mind, and that's your deal. And I think I always harp on about is just be flexible, and just if you're someone who likes doing the hard, challenging things and you feel better for it, go do the hard, challenging things. If you're someone who liked it but actually now is like, you know what, I don't like this anymore, change it. Like, it's your adventure.
It's our adventure. Yeah.
Everyone does this differently, right?
Yeah, absolutely. For other maybe prospective or current bike packers out there, like in Mongolia, we're dealing with a fixed period of time with how long we can be away from. And I know that's something that not everyone has, but because we do have that, there have been times where you do realize that every decision for something is a decision against something else. So in Mongolia, we caught a bus 400 Ks to the border, but we did that so that we could spend another week cycling off-road. We used this extra time that we've been allotted by taking transport to help us explore more of the country and do more of the kind of riding that we want to do. For us, at least, there's no world where both of those things could have existed together.
Yeah, it is. And every decision has a different thing, and every decision will lead to a different experience too. It's sort of like a sliding doors moment. You can't plan everything, but wow. People are going to listen to this and want to follow your journey and see the visuals from it at Garbage Bag Boys on Instagram, right?
Yes, that's it.
You have a really good way of sharing your stories as well, visually and also with words as well. So I definitely encourage you listeners to check it out. Lads, as I wrap the show up, 3 questions, and I ask them of every guest. The first one is music related. You are guests now of Seek Travel Ride. You get to pick a song that gets to become the soundtrack to your adventure. Goes on the Seek Travel Ride playlist on Spotify and Apple Music. What song are you going to pick?
Yeah.
There Will Be Time, Mumford and Sons. Probably the song of the year, or me at least, and Sam also.
Yeah.
Great
It's hard
song.
to pick one, but if I did have to, that's pretty magical.
Oh, well, I've got it down there. I don't think Mumford & Sons is on the playlist yet, so I'm more than happy to have it down there for you. And I'm guessing it's something that pretty well resonates with you both. Do you play music? Do you ever sort of zone out and play music on your riding at all?
All day for me.
Yeah. I bet Akira doesn't.
No,
definitely not.
I'm no Akira, that's for sure.
What was it? It's good?
It is good, yeah. Just silence and the wind.
Next question. I think I definitely know the answer to this, but maybe you'll surprise me. You're given a choice one day. You can go left, and going that way puts you on the most corrugated, washboard, bumpiest mother of a road in the world. There are no smooth bits anywhere. Or you can go right, and all day you are going to be bashed with the full frontal force of the mother of a headwind. Which one are you going to choose?
Can we choose both?
No.
No.
That means you just stay still, right? 'Cause
That's what the Gobi was, man. No, I think definitely the corrugations on these bikes, at least, because we've got those beautifully fat tires, and when you air them down, pretty much it just soaks all of that up versus, I don't know, man, a headwind is just so psychologically draining. You're just working so hard for nothing.
Same, yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, okay. The duo agrees on that question. I didn't think you could have an experience like you did through the Gobi and at all choose the headwind.
No.
Final question, lads. I want you to finish this sentence for me, and that is, the best thing about taking a bike adventure is...
Getting out into nature and listening to a song going downhill in the middle of nowhere, I guess. For me.
What have you there, Sam? What's the best thing about bike travel for you?
I think just experiencing like the full range of human emotions. That's, yeah, for me that's been it. Just, you know, from the worst of the worst to the best of the best, and, you know, or maybe it's just experiencing like the kindness of others who owe you nothing but seem to give you everything.
Yeah, like that family that the shack in Mongolia definitely owed you nothing, and then invited you in for an amazing meal. Both good answers. And like back to the emotion thing, I feel like they're the sort of like you can go from the highest highs to the lowest of lows in a matter of minutes. It feels sometimes like something will just flip it, and it's like, oh wow, everything's okay again. It was a question I didn't ask both of you, and I'm cheeky to ask it now, but friends for the last 3 years. Obviously, doing this type of travel, there'd be a special bond there. How has the friendship been with this? Like, do you find like has there ever been under a strain? Is it a case that you each get each other through?
Yeah, I mean, 1,300 days in a row together, probably. Yeah, I think we learned a lot from India. Had quite a bit of confrontation, a few arguments. We're both pretty strong competitive personalities, so we learned a lot from that, and we learned to not sweat the small stuff, I guess, and just get on with it, knowing that once we get humour back into the equation, you can solve any kind of problem or issue, which we're pretty good at. And
yeah, I reckon that it's hard to answer that question now, but I think that, like, you know, it's like when you have something, you really take it for granted. And it's just the last 1,000 days has been something that is just like such a normal part of life. It's like tap water, you know, that is easy to take for granted. And especially on this year where we've been removed from all our other friends, from all our other like aspects of life, and have just had each other there all day, every day. I think like once we, you know, go our separate ways for Christmas and go on a few of our own things before we link up to do our last year of uni together, I think in that distance we'll be able to look back and like the magic of having a friendship to be able to do this and survive these days will come into the picture. It's almost like we're staring at the mountain right now that's right in front of our face. Like,
yeah, you need to step back to be able to see the view.
Yeah.
I think it's other things I know of other people who've travelled with friends and stuff as well. There's things you don't know that are going to happen forever now. Like, I remember interviewing a guest, Jack Greenwood, and he had a friend who joined him for most of his adventure in South America. Then when they'd finished, randomly, without context, one would send another a photo. No words, no nothing. And then after a few minutes, it would be, I know where that is. This was here, blah, blah, blah. And it's sort of like those shared memories as well. Like, you don't realise they're the sort of things that you could do or we will talk about. I don't know how much you're going to hype up the Gobi Desert. You certainly don't have the type 2 fun, I'd do it all again in a heartbeat mentality on your minds right now either.
But within a week of getting back.
Yeah, I know, that's how it happens. As soon as you stop and go back onto the first shift, you know, the first 72 hours with no patience, you'll be back there. No, maybe not the Gobi, maybe the Tian Shan, or maybe it'll be when you were in a cave for a few days with some other bike travellers. Maybe that's what you'll be wishing for. You know, it doesn't have to be the hardest moments, right?
It doesn't.
Oh, wow. Luke and Sam, what an absolute pleasure it has been. Garbage bag boy lads. Wow, we have gone all through the emotions on so many different journeys. You've done some pretty wild experiences, so I had an inkling when I pressed record that I was going to hear some awesome stories, and you did not disappoint. You've definitely got a strong friendship bond, and as you say, it might be when you're away from each other, finally, for a few weeks or whatever, that you'll realise it. You've definitely created some long-lasting memories together and some awesome stories, shared some awesome experiences and some amazing insights as well. Thank you so much for sharing them here on the podcast for Seek Travel Ride.
Thank you so much for having us, bro. Thank you for the time.
Absolute pleasure.
There we go, listeners, and that wraps up my session with Sam and Luke, the Garbage Bag Boys, two Aussies who have somehow made their way all the way across the most challenging routes from northern Vietnam all the way to Greece there, and packed in a hell of a lot of lifetime experiences to boot. I really love the honesty with which they shared their stories with me, whether it was stuff that would make you wince a little bit or, the heartwarming stuff like Little Burrito the Yak, to the reality of maybe feeling jaded after having to grit through just too many days after days after days. What about you? What did you take away from this? My biggest thing is, and I said it during the show, is it's okay to change your plans. It's okay to be flexible and mold the adventure into something that you want to enjoy. Ultimately, that's the reason why we're taking these after all. I think the other thing that struck me was that they are pretty upfront with each other as well. And the realities of travelling with a good mate for so long isn't lost on me. But it seems like they found their own rhythm, their own way to keep each other up on the road. I can imagine when they're back home in Australia studying uni and taking shifts together as paramedics that they're going to have a fair few stories to swap and a fair few WTF, can you remember when this happened moments as well. Thank you so much, lads. Now, listeners, if you are enjoying the podcast and stories like those of Sam and Luke and tuning in for your own inspiration, you can do me a favour and support the show by heading to buymeacoffee.com/Seek Travel Ride. Buy me a coffee, but leave me a message. Let me know, what is it that you love about the podcast and where will your next bike adventure take you? And until the next episode, I'm Bella Malloy. Thanks for listening.